Some leadership moments do not reveal your strategy. They reveal your restraint. They reveal whether your calling is leading you or your wound is leading you. That is the story of Abigail, but it is also the story of David. One leader had the wisdom to interrupt the crisis. The other had the humility to be interrupted. And in leadership, both matter. Because sometimes the most dangerous moment for a leader is not when they are weak. It is when they are powerful, wounded, and justified. Abigail shows us the courage to speak wisdom. David shows us the humility to receive it. Together, they show us what mature leadership looks like when emotions are high, pressure is real, and one reaction could rewrite the future. Abigail's story is found in 1 Samuel 25, before David becomes king. David had already been anointed, but he was not yet on the throne. He was still in the wilderness. He had promise, but not position. He had calling, but not the crown. He had destiny, but he was still being formed. And that matters because the wilderness does not just test whether a leader can wait. It tests what a leader becomes while they are waiting. David was not a foolish man. He was courageous. He was anointed. He had already trusted God in seasons where most people would have quit. But even called leaders can become dangerous when pain, pride, and power collide. That is the warning in this story. David was not about to lose to Nabal. He was about to lose to himself. David and his men had been protecting the shepherds and property of a wealthy man named Nabal. Nabal had land, he had livestock, he had abundance. He had influence, but he lacked wisdom. And that is a dangerous combination. Influence without wisdom, resources without honor, power without restraint. David sent men to Nabal with a simple request for kindness. But Nabal did not simply refuse him, he insulted him, publicly, carelessly, disrespectfully, and the insult landed in David's wounded pride. That is where many leaders' failures begin, not with lack of talent, not with lack of skill, not even with a lack of calling. They begin with a real wound, and it is handed a microphone. And once the wound starts leading, wisdom has to fight for that room. Nabal's insult struck something in David. And in that moment, David did what many leaders are tempted to do when they feel dishonored. He moved to defend himself. He gathered his men. The weapons came out. The momentum started moving. But momentum is not always wisdom. Sometimes momentum is just anger with speed. A leader can be moving fast and still be moving in the wrong direction. David was on his way to punish an entire household because of one man's arrogance. That is the danger of reactive leadership. It rarely stays contained. It spills. Teams feel it. Families feel it. Organizations feel it. Communities feel it. People who did not cause the wound can still pay for the reaction. This is why restraint is not weakness. Restraint is the strength to refuse a lesser version of yourself. David had the power to act, but power without restraint can turn one emotional moment into lasting regret. Before the destruction arrived, someone saw the danger clearly. A servant understood what was happening. He knew Nabal was acting foolishly. He knew David was coming. He knew the situation was urgent, and he ran to Abigail. The servant may not have held a title, but he carried truth, and Abigail had enough wisdom to listen. That is leadership, because wisdom often arrives through a voice we can easily dismiss. Abigail did not dismiss him. She did not minimize the danger. She did not protect Nabal's image at the expense of everyone else's future. She heard the truth. She recognized the stakes, and she moved. not panic, not denial, not performance, governed action. She prepared bread, wine, sheep, grain, raisins, figs. She brought provisions before persuasion, because sometimes wisdom is not only about what you want to say. Sometimes wisdom is what you bring into the room. Abigail brought humility into a pride-filled moment. She brought restraint into a reaction-filled moment. She brought peace into a crisis that was almost too far gone. When Abigail met David, she did something extraordinary. She did not match his anger. She did not shame him. She did not provoke him. She did not flatter him just to calm him down. She appealed to his future. That is what wise counsel does. It does not attack identity. It protects identity. It calls a leader back to who they are becoming. Abigail did not speak to David like he was evil. She spoke to him like he was in danger of becoming less than what God had called him to be. She could see that David was about to forget. His life was bigger than this offense. His calling was bigger than this insult. His future was too significant to be dragged into retaliation. Abigail did not just save a household. She saved David from becoming the kind of leader his future throne could not afford. And David listened. That line matters, because Abigail's wisdom changed the moment, but David's humility changed the outcome. David did not lose authority by receiving counsel. He protected his authority by receiving counsel. That is the difference between having power and being mature enough to carry it. Abigail shows us the courage to speak wisdom. David shows us the humility to receive it. And leaders need both. We need Abigail voices around us, steady voices, discerning voices, courageous voices, voices that can tell us truth before our emotions make the decision. And we need David's humility inside of us, the willingness to pause, to listen, to change direction, to admit that our first reaction may not be our wisest response. Every leader will face an Abal moment, a moment when someone dishonors you, a moment when the story is not fair, a moment when you could strike back, a moment when anger feels stronger, but wisdom is asking for restraint. The question is not whether offense will come. The question is what gets to lead when it does. Will the wound lead? Will the pride lead? Will the need to defend yourself lead? Or will wisdom lead? Because the leader you become in offense is often the leader people remember. That is why leaders were never meant to lead alone. The higher the responsibility, the more dangerous isolation becomes. We need a circle where wisdom can speak before pressure makes the decision for us. That is why I believe so deeply in Kingdom Factor peer groups, a confidential circle where Christian leaders can process pressure, calling, conflict, decisions, and responsibility with others who understand both leadership and faith. Not performance, not posturing, wisdom, truth, perspective, before the reaction becomes the regret. Abigail did not need the title to change the outcome. David did not lose strength by retrieving correction. Together, they remind us that leadership is not just about having power. It's also about knowing when to restrain it, when to listen, when to let wisdom interrupt anger, and when to protect the future more than to defend the offense. So, before anger writes your next chapter, make sure wisdom has a seat at the table. Lead with courage, receive wise counsel, protect the future, and do not lead alone. To learn more about Kingdom Factor peer groups, reach out and inquire about joining a confidential circle built for leaders who know they were never meant to carry the weight alone.